It's only taken 65 million years, but at last, we have the technology to look inside the head of one very special tyrannosaur.
There's only one like this in the whole world, and just to touch it, it's goosebumps.
Unorthodox dino detective Phil Manning will do the strangest things.
Don't hump me! They're paleontologists!
As he unlocks secrets hidden inside the brain of T-Rex.
We're literally the first people ever to stare inside Stan's brain case.
Right.
And his findings may change the way we think about Tyrannosaurus Rex forever. For 100 years, we've heard that Tyrannosaurus Rex could kick some Cretaceous butt. He certainly had the weapons, but did he have the smarts? Bones fossilize, brains don't. So no one really knows what went on inside his skull. But what if we could rebuild the brain of T-Rex? Phil Manning is going head-to-head against the tyrant Lizard King. Like no one else, Phil Manning has helped change the face of paleontology, exposing dinosaurs as you've never seen them before, out of the bone beds and into the real world. With privileged access to some of the world's most sophisticated technology, Phil and his team challenge long-held assumptions, pose radical questions, and find surprising answers. His investigations take him around the globe to work with scientists from the strangest disciplines.
Lift off, lift off.
Oh, there's a just smoked egg!
He sounds a little bit cheesed off.
And now we are invited along. As Phil tries to get inside the head of this T-Rex.
I've always wondered whether it would be the sight, hearing, or smell of this animal that would have hunted me down and nailed me. Because it is seen as the ultimate predator. But was it? Was it some lumbering animal that sort of staggered into its prey just by luck? Or was it a calculating killer? If we're going to get that answer, it's going to be from inside of there. Are you prepared to play ball?
Definitely, definitely.
It's a very large ball.
Getting inside the head of this dino won't be easy, which is why Phil's enlisted the help of Professor of Anatomy at Manchester University, Alan Crossman, a team of technicians, and a mountain of scaffolding. Phil has tangled with this T-Rex before. He assembled its skeleton when it arrived here at the Manchester Museum.
These holes are like
It's a replica of one truly astounding dinosaur. The original, found by amateur fossil hunter Stan Sakrason back in 1987, was the second most complete Tyrannosaurus Rex ever discovered. And in honor of its finder, it was called Stan. But Phil's only interested in Stan's skull. Uncrushed and virtually complete, it's the most perfect T-Rex skull ever collected, making it the perfect place to look for a brain.
Skull. Skull. It's just ridiculous in size. And to think our brains are bigger.
Our brains are much bigger. I mean, from here onwards, he's just an eating machine, isn't he? Really?
Yes. It's like having a laptop computer driving a supertanker. One that can bite, though. I think we need to
The size of the brain raises the age-old question. Was T-Rex just too stupid to be a ferocious predator? Phil wants to find the answer. But first he has to figure out how to penetrate the bony part of the skull protecting the brain. Buried right behind the eyes is the brain case.
Now, the brain case is weird. I mean, it's not like ours. Back to our big round one, which is very obvious where the brain goes. It's a bit like if this was the brain case and I was able to go, take the top of my skull off and go, brain. It's clear, the brain fits in there. It's not easy. We can't. Which bit do you pull off?
Absolutely not.
I think we need to extract the brain case.
Too much bone, yeah.
Take out the business end and see where the brain would have sat. And for that, I've got a big block of foam.
Right, let's go.
This is going to be our brain case. But we need, given that we're dealing with basically a giant turkey with a T-Rex, turkey carvers.
Is that mine?
That's your weapon.
Perfect.
Stan's supposedly simple brain comes packed in a remarkably complicated case. From the outside, the brain case gives no clue to the shape of the organ it's protecting.
This fits just that bit there.
And the simplest way to see inside is to cut it in half.
Oh, imagine this, the tearing of sinew and flesh. Oh, poor thing. We just cut his brain case in half. Right, this is like the fossil. It's solid. But the original brain, which you can trace, because here we got where the spinal cord goes in. If we were to crack open just the brain case of Stan, pop, it'll be the same on that side. There'll be a cavity, which is what we want to image. It's not the brain.
The brain case is empty because the squishy brain doesn't fossilize. But the interior contours mimic the rough shape of the brain it once held. And the shape of the brain hints at how Stan responded to his world. How well could he really see, smell, and hear? By investigating different parts of the brain, Phil can figure out whether Stan really earned his cred as king of the Cretaceous. But reconstructing Stan's brain is going to take more than a block of foam and an electric carving knife. In his lab at the University of Manchester, Phil gets a very special delivery. It's the real deal. The actual, fossilized, intact brain case of Stan. 65 million years old and utterly unique.
Every once in a while you get to play with something really special. There's only one like this in the whole world, and just to touch it, it's goosebumps. It's amazing.
Phil spent years negotiating access to this fossil. Now he has just a short time to become the first person to get a look inside. The trouble is, the real brain case isn't made of foam, but iron-rich minerals, which impregnated the bones during fossilization. To crack open Stan's nut, Phil will need some serious technology. Hidden behind lead-lined walls, the University of Manchester CT scanner fires super high-power X-rays. To help get Stan ready for his close-up, Phil turns to high-resolution X-ray expert Paul Mummery.
Oh, I can't wait to get this thing on the toaster.
With this technology, they'll be the first people to ever see inside Stan's brain case. As the X-rays penetrate the brain case, the shape of the void will show Phil an echo of Stan's brain.
This is literally like getting an incredibly powerful chest X-ray.
Yeah, that's right. It's easily the largest object we've had in here, and it's essentially a bit of iron, so it's the most dense as well. So
Hey,
we will
you're
be
saying my dinosaur's dense.
Yeah. If it's a friend of yours, Phil, it'll be dense.
Thanks.
The initial CT scan shows potential, but falls far short of the mark. Though the X-rays illuminate the edges of the brain case, they shed no light on the all-important interior, where the soft, brainy bits were.
I'm absolutely devastated. I'd hoped to see the outline of Stan's brain, but Paul's right. Stan's really dense.
Stan's living up to his bonehead reputation. Phil can't use the results, but he won't give in. Time to dial up the power and re-scan Stan. Like a fanatical tourist, a CT scan spends several hours snapping thousands of black and white X-rays from every angle imaginable. Then a computer assembles the X-ray slices into a single three-dimensional model. Or that's the theory. But Phil's got a problem. After their second attempt, one of the world's most powerful CT scanners isn't up to the task.
The bad news is that the X-rays just cannot penetrate, at the moment, the real densest part of the brain case.
The 3D model of the CT scan reveals the extent of Phil's problem. How can he reconstruct the brain of Stan if he can only see the outer edges of the brain cavity?
I'm really not going to let Stan get through to me, because I'm trying to get through to Stan.
To better understand what's going on inside Stan's scan, Phil picks Alan Crossman's brain.
I think to really understand this structure, we've got to get a closer look at a complete brain. I've got this endocast, literally the inside of the brain case of a T-Rex.
Before advances in CT scanning, scientists modeled the interior of the T-Rex skull by filling the brain case with a molding compound. This crude endocast can't compare to a detailed CT scan. But parts of it look strikingly familiar to Alan Crossman.
Well, the basic structure of the brain is retained throughout evolution. Here is a model of a human brain, and this portion here, which is called the brainstem, is essentially the same as this region here on the dinosaur brain.
I just find it incredible that I'm stood talking to someone who works on human brains. I'm clutching the echo of a dinosaur's brain, and there are things that we can talk about to compare between the two. I find that truly remarkable.
And it suggests to Phil another way to work out what went on inside Stan's armor-plated skull. Not to be outsmarted by a dead dinosaur, Phil will try to use the brains of living animals to reconstruct the brain of T-Rex. Since it's no use looking at human brains, Phil will need to go in search of Stan's closest living relatives. To trace the dinosaur's evolutionary history, we need to travel back at least 230 million years, when the tree of life split. One branch led to the evolution of crocodiles, alligators. The other branch led to dinosaurs. And then to their living kin, the birds. So somewhere between gator brains and bird brains stand dinosaur brains. Phil will have to look at both birds and alligators. If he's going to learn more about Stan's brain, he doesn't need a dinosaur expert. He needs a vet.
You are so
And
good.
not just any vet. Phil's come to the University of Pennsylvania to work with avian expert Karen Rosenthal, an authority on special species medicine.
I just can't get over every time I look at a modern-day dinosaur how much... It's true. I know we call them birds, but there are so many things that shout dinosaur to me. Ah!
Karen relies on the CT scanner to diagnose her patients. But this is the first time she has scanned a dead emu and a gator. If Phil can get a look at the brains of these close relatives of the dinosaurs, he has a chance of working out how Stan could have thought, or smelled, or seen. First up, the emu. Primitive for a bird, but millions of years ahead of a dinosaur.
Do you think this would do well at Thanksgiving?
It's not easy getting a 30-kilogram turkey into a high-tech oven.
So in this position, we're going to get a much, much better picture then?
Yes, much, much better. It's worth it.
Okay, I believe you.
Good. Why did you pick an emu?
It's a flightless bird. It hasn't got all of the brain wiring for something you'd expect for flight, and that's close to what I'd hope for would be for a dinosaur.
Unlike the fossilized brain case of Stan, the CT scan has no trouble penetrating the head of the emu. So Phil will have no trouble seeing the brain of the dinosaur's descendant.
The plumbing of this animal is potentially similar to what we'd expect for a dinosaur,
right.
But I'm just hoping that by comparing plumbing of both bird and reptile, we'll have somewhere close.
The brain of the emu shows what dinosaur brains evolved into. The gator brain will suggest what its brain evolved from.
Let's get the beastie in the toaster. Oh, 1, 2, 3.
A little heavy.
Formaldehyde keeps the alligator and emu brain tissue fresh and photogenic.
Using CT scanning must be one of the most efficient ways of getting a look inside an animal.
It is. It's a great way of doing it. It's a dissection without the mess. And it's great.
The scan reveals similarities and differences between the two brains, and those differences in shape point towards the animal's behavior.
When we're looking at the brain case, we see different areas of the brain that are large and other areas that are smaller. So if we're looking at a predator that has eyesight that's incredibly important, well, that part of the brain better be enlarged.
With Karen's help, Phil gathers thousands of CT photos from inside the heads of the emu and the gator. Stan's brain is some combination of the two. For Phil, it's the ultimate brain teaser.
I'm holding more than 200 million years of evolutionary brain data in my hands, but it means nothing till I analyze it.
When scientists need their heads examined, they head to Larry Whitmer. In his lab at Ohio University, Whitmer applies his new techniques of 3D modeling to a menagerie of modern animal heads.
The guys at the vet school have been kindly frying...
If anyone can make sense of the data from Phil's alligator and emu CT scans, it's Larry.
I'm hoping that once we understand the senses of both alligator and emu, we can start making sense of Stan.
We can start to load these data into the computer and sort of get them into format we can look at them.
With careful manipulation, the CT scans become three-dimensional renderings of the alligator's head, with the brain highlighted in living color. No gator ever looked prettier. But understanding the model requires some cruder methods.
So CT has helped us, but a key element still is this very almost primitive way to go about it, where you take a sharp implement like a scalpel or a saw, and you get inside the head of one of these guys.
You just love the gore of it.
Yeah. You gotta have blood on your hands or if you're a real scientist.
Imagine the mess if the alligator head wasn't frozen. It's a dirty job, but someone's got to do it. Because the best way to bring back brains from the past is to take a close look at the present.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it doesn't get much better than that.
I don't fancy your dinner.
This would be good enough to eat.
I just want to see what's going on inside Stan's mind.
One of the key things that we can do is kind of go back and forth between sort of this, old school, low-tech kind of approach, but then actually make the jump into the digital realm where we can start to put some of these pieces together.
Using the dissected gator head helps Larry make sense of the CT scans. And that knowledge, combined with data from the emu, can be used to rebuild the brain of T-Rex.
This is truly remarkable. The CT scans of both gator and emu are really helping fill in the spaces where the CT scans of the T-Rex has let me down.
But Larry has another treat for Phil. A model he built from the reconstructed brain case of a T-Rex at the American Museum of Natural History. The brain case of Larry's specimen may not be as pristine as the T-Rex called Stan, but Phil can still distinguish the regions of the brain. At the front, the olfactory bulbs, which interpret smell. Giant optic nerves feed into the brain's vision center. Underneath, the inner ear and the hearing center. It's a fantastic model, but it's not from Stan, the T-Rex with the world's most perfect brain case. What treasures might Stan have locked away in his vault-like head? Phil's determined to find out, because no dinosaur can compare to Stan. Tyrannosaurus rex is one elusive dinosaur. Paleontologists have dug up only 3 skeletons greater than 50% complete. Often the bones of the skull, if found at all, are scattered or crushed. But not Stan. His immaculate skull provides Phil with his best chance to reconstruct the brain of T-Rex. Having learned all he can from Larry's wonderful models and the scans of the emu and gator, Phil goes in search of another way to penetrate Stan's iron brain case. Phil explains his predicament to Andrew Ramsey from the X-ray Center of Excellence at Nikon Metrology in London.
All right, thanks. How are you? How's the scanning going?
That's what I'm calling. I'm afraid the initial scans of Stan's brain case have not been going too well.
Oh dear.
But Andrew offers some hope. He invites Phil and Stan's brain case to the company's London headquarters to try their newest and most powerful scanner. If it can penetrate the solid metal piston head from the engine of a car, it should be able to penetrate the metal head of T-Rex. Shouldn't it?
I'm willing to try it, because there's just no way this thing's gonna beat me. I just really want to see what's inside that case.
Phil takes his suitcase and his brain case to London. This is Stan's last chance to shine.
I think it's about time we gave Stan a suntan.
This device fires a super high energy beam. And it's an intense moment for Phil, as Andrew Ramsey gets the results from a preliminary scan.
I can already see things that I couldn't see at Manchester, though. The detail is incredible. It's much, much clearer. That has the potential for the first time to allow us to peer inside Stan's brain, or certainly his brain case.
That's great.
That is stunning. I can't wait to see the CT scans.
So let's see how we get on over the next few weeks then.
Weeks.
Afraid so.
Waiting weeks for the results is incredibly frustrating. But it does give Phil time to investigate the latest research on the senses of T-Rex. It's vital Phil discovers how Stan used his eyes, ears, and nose, because each sense influences the shape of his brain. Since Stan's skull had truly enormous eye sockets, Phil starts by taking a look at his vision. As Phil can't look at the eye of T-Rex, he starts with the dinosaur's modern descendants, the birds.
I'd argue every single one of them is a dinosaur.
With no emus around, not even expired ones, Phil sets his sights on their close relatives, ostriches.
Yeah, missed.
A good choice. Their 5-centimeter eyes are the largest of any land animal.
That's me. Don't eat me.
But ostriches are no match for T-Rex, either in eyeballs or ferocity.
Ow! Little bugger.
The trouble is, it's been 65 million years since T-Rex opened its eyes, and no one's ever found a fossilized eyeball.
I never thought I'd be in the market for a dinosaur eye specialist. As daft as it sounds, I actually know such a man.
Kent Stevens of the University of Oregon applies his expertise in computer science to his fascination for dinosaur mechanics. He's expanded our view of T-Rex's vision. Kent uses a scale model of the tyrannosaur head to take a closer look at how T-Rex might have viewed its kingdom.
Well, the big thing about the T-Rex is everything that could get in the way is pushed out of the way. If you take a look, first of all, looking straight down its snout, it's like the raptorial birds. The eyes
The scalloped edges of the snout give T-Rex an unobscured view straight ahead. This simple computer model demonstrates why 2 eyes are better than 1. The cones illustrate the concept of field of view. Where they intersect, that's binocular vision, the same as humans have, and essential for T-Rex to estimate the distance to its prey. T-Rex also has wide peripheral vision. While it draws a bead on its prey, it can still keep a lookout for rivals moving in from the sides.
That is remarkable. So really, these visualization tools that you can generate can help understand more than just sort of vision. It can help interpret fossils. That is really powerful tool.
But to test how clearly T-Rex could see takes some field work. Birds of prey have the sharpest vision in the avian world. Their eyes are so big, there's little room left in the skull for eye muscles. So to look around, the bird has to turn its whole head.
Just watching these animals is just amazing. I just can't help but think when I look at a predatory animal such as this, I think of dinosaurs. The eyes are just so beautiful.
Yeah, I could imagine scaling this up to fit in a T-Rex or any of a number of other.
Scaling this animal to a T-Rex, that would be fairly scary.
We don't know how big the eyeball was, but someplace between 3 and 4 inches in diameter.
Hang on, a 4-inch eyeball, that's like a softball.
But bigger eyes don't necessarily mean better vision. For example, eagles can see up to 3.5 times more sharply than humans during the day. We can see better than crocs in daylight, but they have excellent night vision. T-Rex stood somewhere between these 2 extremes. Bold daylight marauder or a keen nighttime assassin. Either way, T-Rex had killer eyes. But the question remains, if a tree fell in the Cretaceous, did it make a sound T-Rex could hear? Larry Whitmer's model of T-Rex's inner ear raises intriguing questions. And when Phil investigates, he discovers the answers are rocket science.
T-minus 31 seconds, we have a go for auto sequence start.
The alligators infesting the swamps around the Kennedy Space Center have something in common with the space shuttle and T-Rex.
We have SRB ignition and we have liftoff. Liftoff of mission 41D.
They all produce the deep bass notes called infrasound.
Aerodynamic pressure.
Roaring at over 200 decibels, the space shuttle makes some of the loudest human-made noise on the planet. As the low-frequency sound waves roll across the swamp, they don't go unanswered. Male alligators think the space shuttle is a rival male threatening their turf, so they're ready to rumble with infrasonic roars of their own. Our ears just can't detect the ultra-low frequencies, but we can see how the sound makes water dance on their back. Larry Whitmer suggests that, like gators, T-Rex could also hear infrasound.
If we look at certain kinds of dinosaurs like T-Rex and some of its relatives, it turns out there's another attribute they have that also suggests greater sensitivity to low-frequency sound.
Inside T-Rex's skull, a series of large air chambers connected to the middle ear increases sensitivity to the infrasonic rumbles.
Gators and rexes aren't the only creatures to feel the noise. I'm after another one, and it can probably hear me coming from miles away.
Elephants, the largest living land animals, were the first land dwellers known to generate infrasound. Their secret rumblings can travel more than 9 kilometers across the savannah. The infrasonic calls help males find females and keep family groups from wandering too far apart. And when threatened, elephants resort to earth-shaking behavior. They can transmit seismic shock waves to herds over 30 kilometers away, alerting them to danger. The tremors travel up the leg and to the inner ear. It's possible T-Rex and other dinosaurs exploited similar infrasound. Thanks to its super senses, T-Rex may have eavesdropped on these infrasonic rumbles to locate its next meal. But the anatomy of its ear suggests T-Rex listened to much more than just deep bass beats.
I wish I knew what T-Rex could hear in the prehistoric landscape. I have a feeling a little bird might help us, so I'm off to Maryland to find out.
At the University of Maryland, Bob Dooling studies how birds communicate, which begins with studying how well they hear. To test that, trained birds perform in an acoustic chamber. If the bird hears a sound and pegs a switch, it gets a treat. With this technique, Bob has identified the hearing ranges of several bird species.
Most people think birds hear very well at high frequencies. That's not so. We hear much better at high frequencies than birds do. They hear a little bit better at low frequencies, but not as good as we do.
The anatomy of their ears gives birds a surprisingly narrow range of hearing. And dinosaurs had remarkably similar ears to birds.
The dinosaur ear is quite small given its body size.
So what does that tell you about the hearing of dinosaurs?
We know that dinosaurs must have heard best at low frequencies. That's in the region of human speech, so they heard down where we hear best.
And though it's easier to test the hearing of birds than reptiles, a look at crocodile anatomy suggests they hear pretty much the same as birds and dinosaurs.
The crocodilian ear and the avian ear are very similar in their plan, and so are dinosaurs as well. That's why this whole thing works. We can speculate from bird hearing about what dinosaurs might have heard.
And if dinosaurs could hear well, it's conceivable they might have had a few things to say to each other. So it seems T-Rex had sophisticated hearing and exceptional vision. But how well did he follow his nose? To find out, Phil needs to get far too close to the snout of an alligator. Alligators don't smell great, but they have a great sense of smell, suited for sniffing out their supper. But since Phil's a bone hunter, not the crocodile hunter, he lets paleobiologist Greg Erickson deal with the business end of the beast.
Wonder if dinosaurs did this.
He sounds a little bit cheesed off.
Sounds like a dragon, huh?
Sounds more like my sister. Bloody hell. You've picked the only animal here that's called Hercules and weighs 750 pounds.
Now Phil can safely see how the gator pumps air through the nostrils and into the nasal cavity. And who better to get up the nose of a gator than Larry Whitmer?
If we look in the front here, we can sort of see the olfactory bulb, which is coming up right in the back part of this nasal cavity, which makes good sense. So the odors would come in here and then be sensed in the back.
The gator has a keen sense of smell and a correspondingly large olfactory bulb at the front of the brain. But Larry's model suggests the croc's bulb is puny compared to T-Rex. So when it comes to the sense of smell, T-Rex is less like an alligator and more like a bloodhound. And hounds use that keen sense of smell for one thing: the hunt.
Release the hounds! They're gonna eat me!
Oh, better them than a T-Rex.
If the models are accurate, T-Rex was the bloodhound of the Cretaceous. So in a modern twist on a prehistoric scene, Phil and his Manchester colleague, animal behavior expert Matthew Cobb, will attempt to dodge some of the best sniffers on the planet.
You stink. You've got dog breath. I hate to tell you that, darling, but you have.
And you think you've got a bad sense of smell?
Given that T-Rex has this massive area of the brain associated with smell, these olfactory lobes, do you think it's safe to suggest then that T-Rex was relying upon its sense of smell to be a top predator?
I think we can be pretty certain that that was the case. It's the size of its brain, the parts of its brain devoted to olfaction, must have been there for a reason. And the most likely reason is that it was to do with trying to detect its prey.
So it's not completely bonkers that I'm going to be chased by you today, my friend.
Largely, but not completely.
So, Ollie, how long have we got to get away from these dozen noses?
You've got 15 minutes and we're coming after you.
Come on, Matthew.
Let's go.
Now, you stay. You can't cheat.
This way.
Hedge. Hedge is good.
They'll never find us here.
Nah. God, I hate to tell you, Matthew. The one that's coming for you, she's a real dog. Maybe we could have outsmarted T-Rex after all. Why are they getting louder?
The scent detector cells in Phil's nose have a surface area about the size of a small postage stamp. The bloodhound's is as large as a tablecloth. That's 12 million cells in humans versus 4 billion in bloodhounds. And T-Rex, with its enormous snout, had room for many more than that.
Don't hump me! I'm only a paleontologist. Right. Dogs 1, humans 0.
You win, dogs.
Did you notice, though, it was incredible how they didn't use their eyes. They relied on their sense of smell.
They followed what they knew, which was our smell on the ground, and they got to us in the end.
When it comes to the sense of smell, it seems T-Rex was the winner, by a nose. But Phil won't know for sure until Andrew Ramsey is finished with Stan's brain case, which still spins under the interrogating rays of the CT scanner. Even without those results, Phil's made astounding progress. By comparing his preliminary CT data against living animals, Phil's determined that T-Rex had the potential for sharp vision, hearing, and smell. But once all that sensory information entered Stan's tiny brain, did he have the smarts to sort it out?
I'm starting to suspect that the Tyrant Lizard King may have been a lot more sensory savvy than we've given him credit for.
But since Phil can't prove it by getting a tyrannosaur to take an IQ test, he'll have to find a ringer, which means another visit to Rex's grouchy cousin. Phil will gauge Stan's intelligence by comparing him against gators and birds. According to Greg Erickson, even a supposedly stupid gator can become the teacher's pet.
One of the most interesting things that these animals will do is they will be fed 6 days a week over there. But on Sundays, they're fed over here. And you come in here on Sunday, and all the alligators will be over here before the feeding show. In other words, they know what day it is.
So it's sort of behaviour you half expect for something like a domestic dog.
These animals certainly can learn. There's no doubt about it, and you know that's part of their success. So you know these animals aren't quite as dumb as maybe we might assume they are.
I'm really aware of this. That's why I keep looking nervously over my shoulder.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. No, these animals are natural hunters, but they also can learn too. This animal right here, for instance, knows his name. In fact, we can get him to call over here if you want.
You're gonna call a gator?
Sure. Kevin, why don't you call him over?
Bomber!
This is Bomber. He's been here for many years.
Oh, what?
Bomber!
No more.
I think crocodilians are a lot brighter than people realize, and I have no doubt that the dinosaurs were right up there too.
If gators are so smart, and they came before dinosaurs, then what about the descendants of dinosaurs, the birds? Apparently, some are smart enough to get into Cambridge University. Which is why Phil flies in to meet with bird intelligence expert Nikki Clayton.
Demonstrates that this is no
In a quarantined aviary, she's discovered some avian Einsteins. And they're teaching us a few things about animal intelligence. On the Pacific island of New Caledonia, crows use tools to extract juicy beetle larvae. To snag a hard-to-reach grub, the crow makes a fork and lets the larva do the lifting.
Is it just a couple of species of bird doing this, or do you think many other species, given the opportunity, could learn tool use?
Recently, rooks have been found to also manufacture tools, even though they don't even use them in the wild. Now that's cool.
Here at Cambridge, a jay called Romero earns his magna cum laude. Jays don't use tools in the wild, but Romero will in the lab.
So it's like the Bird Brain University of Cambridge.
Absolutely, yes. Mira, do you want a word? You know what I've got.
In this experiment, a waxworm floats in a tube of water. It's the Belgian truffle of the J world, so Romero's gotta have it, even though it's beyond his beak. No one trained him to pick up stones. He worked it out all by himself. If he places enough stones in the tube, eureka, the water level rises.
Go on, do it, Ramirez. I know you can.
Romero may have a bird brain, but with the right incentive, he's smart enough to use a tool.
Do you think we could use this information that you're retrieving from birds to help us understand dinosaurs?
Well, it certainly tells you the potential for what they could do. So there are some mammals that we humans like to think are smarter than others, right? And presumably the same would be true in the dinosaurs, that some of them you would think are cleverer than others.
So if birds and gators are smarter than we ever thought, what does that suggest about T-Rex?
It kind of makes sense that T-Rex wasn't the 7-ton moron he's pegged out to be.
Maybe Stan was a mental giant instead. The only way to tell for sure is to look inside his head. The scan's finally complete.
We're literally the first people ever to stare inside Stan's brain case. Right. Look at that. That's the olfactory lobe, sort of the front, the sensory part of the animal, all to do with smell. They are huge.
Stan's brilliant brain case confirms all that Phil has deduced, right down to the supersize olfactory lobes. Stan's smell center practically dwarfs the whole hind brain.
If the size of these bulbs correlates to sense of smell, this thing had amazing sense of smell. Clearly a predator.
Phil's achieved his goal. By pushing scanning technology to the limit, he's the first to see inside the best T-Rex brain case ever discovered. And along the way, he's compared Stan with his living relatives.
Let's go.
To create the first in-depth picture of how T-Rex saw and smelled and heard its world. Put it all together, and there can be no doubt that T-Rex was a ferocious, cunning killer. It's easy to imagine the scene. A T-Rex on the prowl, while far away, 2 Triceratops move across the plain. Their footsteps generate low-frequency seismic sound waves that ring like a dinner bell when they enter the super-sensitive ears of a hungry predator. By following the infrasonic trail, he's within earshot when the male Triceratops shouts his mating call. Now T-Rex can follow his nose. A calculating predator, he moves downwind until he spots his prey. Quickly sizing up the situation, he will divide the pair and then block the escape route. The rest is prehistory. Thanks to his groundbreaking research, Phil Manning and his team have finally solved the case of the iron brain case. But many more ancient mysteries await this most unusual dino detective.
Ah, hello.
Right, well, we can be thankful for small mercies that we're not being chased by a 5-ton one of these with a 5-foot-long head and teeth the size of bananas. Ah! Get off, dog.